Elsie Paxton's life had always been the envy of her friends and colleagues. Getting married at 19, and so successfully. Raising a beautiful daughter, working at her dream job, having everything a woman could dream of. Wasn't that happiness? However, Elsie herself had a vague notion of happiness, and she completely disagreed with her friends' opinions. At the age of 44, she had already weathered the midlife crisis and come to terms with the fact that her husband, Drake, didn't love her at all. From the outside, their marriage seemed flawless. A luxurious apartment, regular vacations at prestigious resorts, weekly dinners at expensive restaurants, and if he gave a gift, it came with diamonds. No, Elsie and Drake didn't argue. They just hadn't spoken to each other for about 2 years. Not at all. Even a simple good morning was a rare occurrence in their apartment. Only if her husband was in a good mood. Their life together had turned into a silent ritual. The spouses silently had breakfast, after which each went about their business. At lunch, Elsie would send her husband a text. For example, "I'll be late. Warm up dinner," or "Today we're going to the Fisher family." The Fisher family were their best friends. Nell had been friends with Elsie since their college days, and her husband Lucas had become friends with Drake. The men seemed to have nothing in common. The polished Drake, managing a well-known architectural firm in the city, was always impeccably dressed. Suit, tie, shoes polished to a shine, strict haircut. On the other hand, the unkempt Lucas, who had spent more than half of his life in the mountains, appeared as a somewhat caricatured figure in his stretched-out sweater and perpetual stubble. However, they got along right from their first meeting. Their common passion brought them together. Both were literally obsessed with hunting. They would often venture far north together, hunting wild boars, moose, and even bears. Upon returning with their trophies, they would immediately start planning a new joint trip or regale their wives with tales of previous adventures. Elsie and Nell found it amusing, so they didn't interfere and let their husbands pursue their shared interest. The Paxton family frequently visited the Fishers, or vice versa, several times a week. It seemed easier for them to just start living together, as Elsie jokingly remarked. Considering that they lived in different parts of the city, the suggestion didn't sound too comical. Despite the silent conflict between Elsie and Drake, it didn't affect their relationships with friends. They continued to gather together and have a good time. Perhaps that's why Elsie didn't pay much attention to the issue, thinking that everything was going as it should. But this morning, everything took an unexpected turn. When she woke up, Elsie found a tray next to her with a bouquet of fresh flowers, a couple of croissants, and a cup of fragrant coffee. "What's this?" Elsie exclaimed in surprise. And then an unexpected thought crossed her mind that Drake had gone mad. "Oh, you're awake," her husband said softly, entering the bedroom. "Happy anniversary, my joy. And this is for you." Drake handed Elsie a flat velvet box, and as she opened it, she gasped. Inside was an incredibly beautiful necklace adorned with blue stones. "Drake," she exclaimed, her eyes widening. "Are you out of your mind? These are sapphires." "Elsie, why are you acting like a child? It's our anniversary today. By the way, 25 years. Can't I give my precious wife something valuable?" "It's not about that. I thought." Elsie hesitated. "What?" "Well, you probably noticed it yourself. Lately, we haven't been getting along too well. Honestly, I even forgot that today is our anniversary. I'm terribly embarrassed. But, Elsie," her husband embraced her, "there's nothing to worry about. I've noticed it all. And I decided to make amends. It all started when Becca left." "Becca is their daughter." Elsie became pregnant before their wedding when she and Drake had just started dating. When Drake learned he would become a father, without hesitation, he married Elsie. Coming from a traditional family, he never entertained the thought of leaving a girl with a child, even though he knew he didn't harbor any special love for Elsie. However, things worked out well for them, and Becca became the bond that strengthened their union. Many families face serious challenges with the arrival of a child. For the Paxton family, on the contrary, everything fell into place. The longer they stayed together, the stronger their family became. Both parents adored their daughter. Becca grew up as a cheerful child, and Elsie and Drake were actively involved in raising her. A sort of competition emerged between them to show greater love. Elsie worked as a child psychologist, and her views on upbringing were clear and professional. She engaged in constant dialogue with her child and enrolled her in various activities, but only those that Becca chose herself. Drake spoiled his daughter. He felt that Elsie was too strict with the child. Often, they secretly indulged in ice cream, bought half of the children's stores, and amassed heaps of dresses. The mother couldn't do anything about it. No matter how hard she tried to educate Becca according to the rules, her husband undermined everything. If the daughter started falling behind in school, Elsie made an effort to work with her, but Drake insisted on not intervening, not robbing the girl of her childhood. In the end, Becca grew up spoiled and headstrong. She found amusement in the competition between her parents. She understood that her father would always take her side in any situation, and all of her mother's attempts to do things her way would crash against the wall of her father's love. Becca loved them, but her personality left much to be desired. By the time she finished school, the girl had turned into a real brat. Now she manipulated her father to get what she wanted. Elsie couldn't understand how she, a professional child psychologist, ended up with such a daughter. She had helped many parents deal with their children, but unfortunately, she had only ruined things for herself. The inflexible principles of her husband were to blame for it all. Even then, Elsie subconsciously started blaming him for all the family troubles. When Becca entered university, it seemed like everything stabilized. The girl showed an interest in her studies, although school lessons had previously filled her with wild boredom. However, the chosen field was just something she liked. Becca enrolled in medical school. None of her parents even thought that their daughter had a real talent. Biology and Latin, which made other students nervous, seemed easier to Becca than the multiplication table. She became one of the top-performing students. Elsie truly began to feel proud of her, attributing some of the credit to her upbringing. Drake used to boast about his daughter's achievements to numerous acquaintances. Becca immersed herself in her studies, becoming serious, focused, and developing a sense of responsibility that was unfamiliar to her before. They say people don't change, but apparently, youthful idealism gave way when a clear goal formed in the girl's mind. Even the atmosphere at home changed. It became much calmer, with no more arguments over dolls or phones. As Becca neared the end of her academy, she shocked her parents with news. The girl planned to move to another city to work at a clinic after graduation. They were already expecting her there. The prospect of parting with a daughter who had been an integral part of them for over 20 years was not pleasant for the parents. Becca kept her word. As soon as she received her diploma, she left. From that moment, silence filled the Paxton house. Initially, the spouses tried to maintain the illusion of a happy family, but it didn't work. Both understood that something was missing. It wasn't Becca they lacked. It was the love that had never been there, cleverly masked by caring for the child. That's when Elsie initiated a serious conversation with her husband, Drake. She began hesitantly as they were having dinner. He replied, "What if we have another child?" Drake even choked on his food. "Darling, what are you talking about? Is that something extraordinary? We're still quite young. You know, nowadays, people give birth at what age? 40-something is the ideal age for motherhood. I understand that, but why do we need this? And primarily, why do you need this? You've already established yourself as a mother. Look at the daughter you raised. She'll bring us grandchildren soon. You'll have your hands full." "No," Elsie said, "grandchildren are entirely different. I want another child. I'm much more experienced now than before. I can raise them perfectly." "Elsie, there's no such thing as perfect. You know that, don't you? And what? You'll walk around with a belly at 40-something. I beg you. You're so old-fashioned, Drake, sighed Elsie. She had brought up this topic several times, but her husband remained adamant. The fewer chances Elsie had to persuade him, the less they communicated. It seemed that Drake, once again, feared initiating any conversation, dreading that Elsie would bring up the painful subject. Over the years, this state of affairs became routine for both of them. When Drake congratulated his wife on their anniversary, she convinced herself that the long-standing conflict had come to an end. Her husband invited her to a restaurant in the evening. Elsie flew to work as if on wings. She had her own private office where she met young patients and their concerned parents. The joy that settled in her soul that morning reflected in her appearance. Secretary Tiffany scrutinized her mysteriously smiling boss for a while with suspicion. "Elsie," she asked, "why are you so happy today?" "It's our anniversary with my husband, Tiffany. Can you imagine? 25 years together." "Really?" the girl exclaimed. "I didn't even think you've been together that long. People are so lucky. I haven't had much luck with guys. The longest relationship I had lasted a year. And even then, I just couldn't bring myself to leave." "You're still very young. Don't worry. Right now, you're just gaining experience. It's entirely natural. I got married at 19. Can't say there are that many advantages." "How?" Tiffany said. "No fights, no quarrels. He doesn't cheat on you. Actively contributes to development. He's not a husband. He's a golden catch." Elsie sighed heavily. Tiffany was right. But over all these years, she had never experienced true love. But how do you explain that? For many, material success took precedence. They live without denying themselves anything. Feelings can be pushed aside. And to her, like a teenage girl, longed for vibrant emotions. Not this sterile, model-like life, but a real one, with scandals, passionate reconciliations, and genuine feelings. Perhaps wishing for something like that at the age of 44 is foolishness. Elsie didn't want to agree with that. So, old age quietly creeps up, and real emotions turn out to be absent. Well, they were there when Becca was growing up. Unconditional maternal love overshadowed everything. Perhaps that's why she desperately tried to persuade her husband to agree to another child. She wanted to relive what she had already experienced once. Of course, if she miraculously gets pregnant, Drake will agree to keep the baby. But the problem is precisely that a miracle will be needed. The closeness between spouses faded even earlier than their communication. Elsie simply accepted this fact. She didn't suffer much from it, but still, sometimes, she felt a kind of desire for her husband. Unfortunately, Drake remained indifferent. By lunchtime, a little girl was brought into Elsie's office. Mina was 6 years old. The girl was very thin and nervous. Her mother, a woman in her 30s, differed little from the child. "Here, take a look," she said irritably to the psychologist. "I don't know what to do with her anymore. She doesn't eat anything, cries all the time, throws tantrums, refuses to go to kindergarten. And what should I do? I work. I don't have time to listen to her tantrums." "I understand," Elsie replied wearily. She saw dozens of such worn-out moms dealing with everyday problems every day. They all had the same issues. A disobedient child interfering with their personal lives. Most often, these were young single mothers. Sometimes Elsie wondered why these women had children at all. Many of them were childish, selfish, and frankly foolish. They didn't understand that children needed attention, not just another toy. "Leave us for a few minutes, please. I'll invite you in shortly," Elsie requested. "Why can't I stay here? I want to participate too," the mother aggressively demanded. "She wants to participate. It would be better if she showed this involvement in the child's life." Elsie smirked to herself. "I will call you, but first, I need to get to know the girl," Elsie continued. "Fine. The woman agreed after a brief hesitation, likely prompted by the ringing of her phone, which she hurriedly answered before leaving the room. "Hello, Mina," Elsie greeted the girl. "My name is Elsie. Shall we play a little together?" "Sure. In what?" The little one became interested. "Well, what do you like?" Elsie asked. "I don't know," Mina uncertainly replied. "Maybe you play something with your mom. Do you have a favorite game?" Elsie inquired. "We don't play with my mom," the girl said sadly. "She gives me a tablet and leaves." "Do you go for walks?" "No. Sometimes we work to the store, but mom is always sad. It's boring with her." "I see," Elsie pondered. "Let's play this game then. I'll show you some pictures, and you describe what you see." "Let's do it." The girl perked up again. Elsie took out a box of bright cards, displaying them one by one to Mina. With excitement, Mina began describing what she saw. However, as Elsie expected, the pictures didn't evoke positive associations for the little girl. It was evident that her mother was not fully engaged with her. Mina suffered greatly from having nowhere to channel all the love and energy accumulated inside her. Elsie couldn't engage in re-educating this mother. She had long realized that these seemingly busy parents would nod along, and then the situation would only worsen. It was much easier for them to ask a therapist for a prescription for the child, just to mask their own incompetence. Elsie didn't practice such methods. With every child brought to her, she went all the way, hoping to heal those delicate, wounded souls. A half-hour conversation/game with Mina painted a complete picture. The girl brightened up, and even a blush appeared on her cheeks. "Well, how was it?" Elsie asked when the cards ran out. "Awesome." The girl smiled. "I wish it could always be like this. You can play by yourself. Tell me, do you like to draw?" "Maybe," Mina replied hesitantly. "Just don't tell me you've never drawn anything." "I like sculpting with clay," the girl said. "That's great. How about I give you tasks, and you can sculpt them from clay?" "Can I?" Mina's eyes widened. "Of course, if it brings you joy. There's no need to limit yourself. I also like drawing, but I don't have any paints. There are some in the kindergarten, but I don't like it there. The teacher is mean. She yells at me all the time." "Do you misbehave?" "No, I'm good. I just eat very little. I don't feel like it. Then she scolds me, and then mom scolds me." "Why do you eat so little? Don't you like it? I think you have a favorite dish that you wouldn't refuse no matter what happened." "Yes." The girl looked away. "Carrots. A little one, square." Elsie understood that the girl meant carrot sticks, similar to those included in children's menus. Not the most complete menu for a child, but still, does the mother not take her anywhere? Elsie was filled with anger for this little girl whose entire life seemed to revolve around anxieties and distress, feeling unwanted by the person she loved most. The psychologist called the mother into the office. Each time, it became harder for Elsie to contain her emotions. She wanted so much to openly reprimand this irresponsible woman, but it was unprofessional. "Well, convinced," the mother began. "Completely uncontrollable child." At that moment, she noticed that Mina was smiling. For a moment, the mother was taken aback. Her face initially reflected concern, but then, mirroring the girl's behavior, she smiled too. "No pills are needed for her," Elsie began. "Mina is perfectly healthy. She doesn't have psychosis, neurosis, or any of the things you mentioned on the phone. It's just a lack of attention." "What deficiency?" "I buy her everything she asks for." I often see parents trying to buy off their children. Understand, all she needs is your love, not dolls or sweets. "When was the last time you went somewhere together?" Elsie asked. "We go every day. I pick her up from kindergarten. We go to the store." "Not that. Take Mina to the zoo, puppet theaters, amusement parks. Just take her work along the promenade. Understand? A single such work will restore her appetite and lift her mood. I know you're always working, but once a week is entirely manageable. You'll also get some rest. The family atmosphere always reflects on the children. The girl grows up thinking she's not needed by the dearest person. Do you even know what she likes? Dolls. The woman pondered. I definitely liked them at her age. Exactly. But she's not you, although she's very similar. She likes sculpting with clay and drawing. Right now, go to the toy store and buy her paints. Let her choose. Don't forget the brushes. You'll see how the child changes in a couple of days. If I were you, I'd have a serious conversation with the kindergarten teacher as well. What for? The woman was surprised. Think for yourself. Would you eat when someone yells at you and even scolds you in front of everyone? I doubt it. Why should Mina endure such treatment? It's natural for a child to withdraw into themselves and refuse to eat in such conditions. Don't think that she's too young and doesn't understand anything. Right now, she's absorbing everything. You won't notice when the girl grows up, and all the accumulated grievances will turn into a lack of serious consideration for you. She'll leave home at the first opportunity and forget it all like a bad dream. It's easy to fix now. I expect you in a week. Consider it homework. Work on it together. Thank you. The mother of Mina thanked shyly. And yes, Elsie called out as they were leaving the office. Right now, go to a cafe with the child where they sell carrot sticks. Mina was the last patient scheduled for today. After her departure, Elsie once again contemplated the child. A sudden overwhelming melancholy engulfed her, causing a headache. She asked Tiffany for a cup of strong herbal tea. Fort saluted her. Suddenly, she remembered the planned dinner at the restaurant. Oh, I haven't even bought a dress yet. I need to find a gift for Drake. And the salon appointment is coming up soon. I should go. He'll be disappointed if I'm late. Elsie bought a beautiful evening dress, styled her hair, and applied striking makeup. Looking at herself in the mirror, she noted that she was still young enough, and others probably wouldn't pay much attention to her with a slightly larger belly. The evening with her husband went splendidly. Elsie gave him a beautiful engraved hunting knife. Oh, Elsie. Drake shook his head. The gift is top-notch, but don't you think giving knives is bad luck? Nonsense. Elsie waved her hand. It's a useful item, something you need. It can't compare to your gift. And superstitions are a sign of foolishness. Is that so? Drake laughed. All right, if you say so. The spouses drank red wine and laughed, reminiscing about the past. Elsie didn't notice how she got tipsy, and Drake was already having difficulty articulating his words. So they soon headed home. Stepping into the apartment, Elsie swayed on her high heels. She would have fallen if her husband hadn't caught her. Pressed against him, the woman felt the painfully familiar scent of the perfume that used to drive her crazy. Whether it was a nostalgic impulse, the wine, or a combination of both, an unexpected surge of tenderness overwhelmed her. She kissed her husband, and he responded. Over a month had passed since the anniversary. Contrary to Elsie's expectations, after that evening, or rather, that night, her husband became even colder towards her than before. She couldn't understand the reason for such a change, as outwardly, everything seemed to have improved. They had celebrated their anniversary so magically, but for some reason, Drake woke up greatly disturbed the next morning. This sense of guilt transmitted even to Elsie. They hadn't exchanged a single word. Worse yet, since that day, Drake had almost stopped coming home. Elsie lacked the courage to ask her husband where he was disappearing to. Somehow, she convinced herself that Drake had relocated to the office. Tired of racking her brain, she headed there after work. Drake's office was located in a restored historic mansion in the city center. His architectural firm was considered one of the best, with a team of high-class architects and designers. While Drake used to design projects himself, the firm grew, attracting more clients, and he decided to expand the staff. Over 20 years, the small private company transformed into a respected firm handling projects of various scales. The office was spacious and comfortable, with a large lounge on the second floor where Drake often stayed when work kept him late. That's why Elsie assumed that Drake had been spending his recent days there. The office day was coming to an end. A bored security guard sat at the reception. Seeing Elsie, the man stood up. "Good evening, Elsie," he greeted. "Hello, Bruce. Is Drake still upstairs?" Elsie inquired. "Yes, he hasn't come down yet, even though everyone else has left." "Can I go up?" "Of course. Do you want me to announce you?" "No, we already made arrangements," Elsie replied. Elsie climbed the wide staircase to the second floor and knocked on her husband's office door. "Come in," came the reply from inside. Drake was sitting on the sofa, and next to him was a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the table. "Elsie," he exclaimed, surprised. "What brings you here?" "Hello, Drake," Elsie responded uncertainly. "I thought I'd find you here. Why haven't you been coming home?" "Got a lot of work," mumbled Drake. "So much that you have to spend the night in the office. You've been almost missing for a month. I'm worried." "Stop it." Drake waved it off, downing his glass in one gulp. "I can see what kind of business you have, Drake. What's going on? Don't you want to talk? And do you often drink like this?" "I want to. And I drink. I'm a grown man," he replied defensively. "Absolutely. But you have obligations. A family. After all, a family." Drake suddenly laughed. "Do you really believe that's what we have? Since Becca left, all our problems surfaced. And the main problem, do you know what it is?" "No, I don't." Elsie felt a chill inside. "That we never loved each other. We got married because of a child, lived together because of a child. Even now, seeing everything falling apart, you are still trying to patch it up with yet another child. Let's part ways, Elsie. I can't take it anymore. I'm tired. Tired of this whole situation. Tired of you. Even tired of myself." "What are you talking about?" Elsie stared at her husband in disbelief. His words cut deep into her self-esteem, but she knew it was all true. "Listen." Drake took another sip but spoke coherently. "I don't love you. I never have. Yes, we got used to each other. I respect you, appreciate you, but I want something more." "More?" Elsie was surprised. "Yes, more. I want freedom. To do what I want, how I want, and with whom I want. You restrict me with your rules. Do you think I don't see how you use your psychological tricks on me?" "Drake, you're mistaken. Even now, you're old, boring, a discontented woman. I don't intend to drag you on my shoulders for the rest of my days, limiting myself in everything." "You're drunk. Drake, I'll leave now. Let's talk tomorrow." Elsie could barely hold back her tears. She never expected to hear such words from her husband. "And I'll tell you the same thing sober. Aren't you embarrassed that we've been silent all this time? What is this? Some kind of family strengthening exercise?" Drake said. "But on our anniversary, I thought we had solved the problem," Elsie replied. "Solved?" Drake chuckled. "Is that your idea of a solution? It was a mistake." "No, not a mistake. It was necessary for me to be absolutely sure that I feel nothing for you. And, Elsie, I should have said this a long time ago. But I was a fool. I have another woman." Elsie's legs gave way, and she slumped heavily into the chair. For a minute, she pondered her husband's words. Is it really true? Or is he saying this to spite me? If it's true, it explains a lot. "Yes, Elsie, it's true," Drake said, as if reading her thoughts. "I love this woman and don't want to deceive anyone anymore. That's why I'm asking you for a divorce." "Is she younger?" Elsie asked. "Well, younger than you." Drake smirked. "And how long have you been together?" "A year and a half. Not a short time," Elsie muttered. "To be honest, I thought you had someone too. But what kind of woman are you? You never got upset, seeing how our relationship was falling apart. I thought you didn't care about anything. And then I met Alice by chance. She commissioned a project for an apartment, and since there were no available designers, I decided to take on this. That's how it all happened. Elsie stood up, lingered briefly near her husband, watching as he poured himself another drink, and silently left. Stepping outside, she realized that something terrible had just happened. But the magnitude of this catastrophe was gradually sinking in. So, he left me. And now what? Am I destined to be alone? This is some kind of misunderstanding. No, I don't believe it. He's just drunk. But deep down, Elsie understood that it was not a misunderstanding at all. Their long-standing marriage ended just as it began, suddenly and devoid of emotions. Elsie didn't even blame her husband for infidelity. Could it even be called infidelity? For the past few years, he lived with her like a ghost, silently wandering around the house. Anyone else would have sought comfort elsewhere. And Drake was right, there was never any love in their relationship. Elsie couldn't even genuinely get angry with him. The only thing that truly hurt her were his remarks about age. What do you mean? Old? I'm only 44. He's no spring chicken himself. Or is he comparing me to his new fling? Surely, he found himself some 20-year-old. And what does it even mean, dragging me? I never once reproached him for anything in my entire life. I tolerated his antics with Becca, even though I saw that he spoiled the child, questioning all my upbringing. I can take care of myself, and I've never asked for anything. All these expensive gifts were solely his initiative. He won't be dragging me anywhere. He accuses me of limiting his freedom. Well, let him roll with his, what's her name, Paris, Alice. It doesn't matter. Elsie walked, contemplating the events. She was so lost in thought that she didn't even realize she hadn't gotten into the car and ended up walking home. A few weeks later, Drake came to her workplace and brought divorce papers. Elsie didn't bother asking anything, just inquired about the court date. Standard. 2 months after filing the papers. Our daughter is of legal age, so there won't be any issues. Questions may arise only about the division of property. You understand, we'll have to split everything in half. Oh, that's what it is. I don't need anything except the apartment and my car. You can keep everything else. Elsie replied. No, that won't do. Her husband suddenly protested. We'll split the apartment too. Elsie wondered, was Drake really this petty? In principle, apart from this apartment, their joint property included 2 cars, an unfinished house in the suburbs, and a small joint account. Moreover, he earned very well, unlike her. Granted, her consultancy income was more than enough for one person, but it couldn't compare to Drake's level. Did he really want to go to court? It seemed like her husband was not acting on his own but under the influence of his current passion. The Drake Elsie knew would never have done such a thing. What did this apartment mean to him? They bought it when Becca turned 3, and it was the most prestigious house in the city at the time. Elsie had to sell the apartment her parents left her, along with her savings. Back then, Drake's business was actively expanding. Both of them invested significantly. This apartment held many memories for Elsie, and she didn't want to move out. Of course, Elsie could have simply bought out her share, but she didn't have that kind of money. Drake, this isn't right. She told her husband. What's not right? Legally. He wondered. Understand, for me, this apartment isn't just a box to live in. It's filled with cherished moments. Every fold in the curtains here is dear to me. Let me give up everything else that I'm entitled to. But let's agree that the apartment will stay with me. Elsie. Drake responded wearily. It's not done that way. Not done that way, you say? And leaving your wife after 25 years of life together, is that normal to you? Elsie was torn apart by indignation. What does that Paris, Alice, corrected her husband. I don't care. What advice does she give you? Drake, it seems you've become a pushover. I never thought you'd be like this. You know what? Since you don't want to meet me halfway, I'll turn away too. I won't give you a divorce. We'll see in court who's entitled to what. Just keep in mind, I won't spare any effort to deprive you of your accustomed comfort. For the second day, Elsie felt awful. Severe nausea hindered her work, and there was a general malaise. She asked Tiffany to cancel all appointments and headed home. In the past few days, Elsie had been extremely nervous. The impending divorce threw her off balance. Although she didn't feel like an offended or humiliated woman, there was still a sense of discomfort in her soul. Her husband seemed like a traitor. As a psychologist, she understood how exaggerated her emotions were. But as a woman, there was nothing she could do about it. Wrapped in a blanket at home, she took a sleeping pill and tried to sleep. She dreamt of nonsense. A tall, red-haired woman rocked her in a cradle, praising how good she was. Then Drake appeared, dressed in a bear's skin, and she had to run across some swamps. She began to sink, but an unfamiliar man with a stern, tan face pulled her out. He told her not to do that anymore. Little girls shouldn't wander alone in the swamps. Elsie woke up drenched in sweat. She felt nausea rising in her throat and barely made it to the bathroom. "Oh God," she exclaimed. "Why did I go eat sushi with Nell? I never liked Japanese cuisine." When Nell learned that her best friend was getting divorced, she thought it was a joke. But seeing Elsie's serious face, she immediately understood that it was real. How could this happen? Nell wondered. "You're not kids. After so many years together, you're getting divorced. Did he get a mistress?" "Nellie, it's not about that. You see, we never loved each other." "What do you mean? You always seemed like the perfect couple to me." "That's just the outer shell. We haven't even talked in the last 2 years. Both of us pretended that it was okay. Well, I pretended. And Drake, it turns out, got a mistress. He confessed everything to me. But you know, I don't even blame him. I'd probably do the same in his place." "Do you have someone?" "Are you kidding?" "From where?" "I live with my work and family. Or, well, I lived. Now I can't even imagine what will happen." "I would." "Elsie," Nell said seriously, "in your place, find a decent man. Look at how beautiful you are. Independent, experienced, and in general, women like you should be married without hesitation." Oh, what a fool Drake is. But love is necessary, that's true. I love my geologist. And even though he looks unkempt and is always disappearing on his expeditions, you know how my heart beats when he appears all scruffy and satisfied at the doorstep. "You're lucky, Nell," Elsie sighed. "And you'll be lucky too. Consider Drake as a necessary intermediate stage. Well, he was there, you're still here. Appreciate that. Be happy for today. No need to regret the past. It's gone. Forget it. The future hasn't even arrived yet. You can create it yourself." Where do I find the strength for all this? Right now, I feel like a vase from which they threw out the flowers, leaving stagnant water inside. What a comparison. You urgently need a self-esteem boost. Tomorrow we'll go shopping, to the spa, and maybe even to the zoo. Which zoo? Have you completely lost your mind? Just look at how beautiful and proud animals are forced to sit in cages, constrained by circumstances and deprived of freedom. Are you comparing me to them? Oh, you're clever. Nell laughed. Elsie, I love you very much. I don't want to see this proud and beautiful woman, whom I've admired all my life, locking herself in a cage of circumstances and slowly fading away. Fate has given you boundless freedom now. Your daughter is an adult. Your husband. Let him go. Do everything you've dreamed of but couldn't afford. You know, you're right. Elsie pondered. Okay, let's go to the zoo. You convinced me. Nausea persisted. Elsie cursed herself again for yesterday's sushi. I might have to cancel the spa appointment, she thought. What do people usually drink for food poisoning? Elsie rummaged through the medicine cabinet and took the selected medications. The powder quickly took effect, and the discomfort in her stomach disappeared. The rest of the day, Elsie spent relaxing at the spa with her friend. The next day, She experienced another bout of nausea. "What is this?" Elsie complained. "It can't be." But what if? A sudden suspicion left Elsie perplexed. She rushed to the pharmacy and purchased a pregnancy test. Within 5 minutes, Elsie knew that a new life was developing inside her. "This can't be," Elsie thought. "These things are sometimes wrong. But nausea. And I haven't had my period for a long time. But that's not conclusive. My cycle has always been irregular. I need to go to the hospital urgently." But during the consultation, the gynecologist only confirmed her suspicions. "Well, Elsie, congratulations. You're going to be a mom. Already 8 weeks. Not your first pregnancy, I assume?" "No, the second." Elsie blushed. "My daughter is already 25. It's commendable that you decided to have a second one. Is it not too late for me?" "Don't talk nonsense," reassured the doctor. "Giving birth at 45 is quite normal these days. If it were your first pregnancy, there would be some risks, of course. But now everything will go well. Your husband probably has no idea, does he?" "Of course, he has no idea," Elsie replied distantly. She suddenly started to contemplate how to break this news to Drake. Or should I even tell him? The woman pondered. He didn't want a child. Now there's the divorce. What if he changes his mind again? And I have no desire to forgive him after such betrayal. I don't want to live with him. No, it's over. A completed stage. And there's no point in trying to mend what's broken. I won't say anything. At least not for now. All right, what about Becca? Should I tell her? What if she spills everything to her father? Or should I keep it a secret from everyone? At least for now. When Elsie came home, she still couldn't get over the news. Of course, she wanted a child, but the thought of raising it alone troubled her. "Why not?" she said aloud. "I'm an independent woman. So what if my husband left? But this will be my child, and I can raise it the way I want, without interference. I won't tell Becca anything either." As if sensing something amiss, she called her daughter. "Hi, Mom," Becca joyfully said into the phone. "Hello, dear," Elsie replied. "It's so unexpected to hear from you." "What do you mean unexpected? Aren't you happy to hear from me?" "Don't talk nonsense." Her mother chuckled. "Mom, is everything okay? Why are you asking?" Elsie became alert. It seemed to her that Becca already knew about her future brother or sister. "Dad just called today. I still can't accept the fact that you are getting divorced," Becca said. "Becca," Elsie sighed. "It's easy to judge from a distance. You left and didn't see what was going on at home. When Drake brought up the divorce, I didn't even resist. We were tired of each other, especially since he has a new woman." "What woman?" Her daughter was surprised. "Are you not aware? Didn't Dad tell you?" Elsie wondered. "No, of course not. He told me that you initiated the divorce." "That scoundrel." Elsie got angry. "No, honey, your dad has been seeing another woman for a year and a half. I don't know if he's leaving for her or not, but he told me about it himself." "Well, Dad, I'll talk to him about everything." "Daughter, you don't have to. It's his life. Let him do what he wants." "I thought maybe you found someone for yourself. You and Nell conspired." Elsie laughed. "Who would I find? Why are you so skeptical?" Her daughter wondered. "You're still young, beautiful. There are plenty of men around. You'll meet someone else." "Don't make me laugh. Where will I meet someone? On the street? Or hope that some lonely and very attractive single dad will bring his child to my office?" "I don't know, Mom," Becca pondered. "It doesn't seem so difficult. The main thing is not to lose yourself. You have the right to be happy." Elsie strolled through the aisles of the baby department. Yesterday's ultrasound assured her that the pregnancy was progressing well, and a healthy baby girl would be born in just 5 months. Elsie was overjoyed. Although her belly was starting to show, she managed to keep the pregnancy a secret from those around her, even from Nell. Elsie took serious steps to prepare for the upcoming arrival of her child. She decorated the nursery, bought a stroller, and now decided to visit the store to purchase clothes, toys, and various essentials for her unborn daughter. Her eyes were dotting around, grabbing everything she liked without considering the price. She couldn't wait to become a mother, and nothing else occupied her thoughts. "Elsie." A voice came from behind. It was Nell. Elsie was startled. She didn't expect to meet her friend here. Nell looked at the contents of Elsie's cart with surprise. "You're not only helping kids in your counseling sessions, but decided to provide humanitarian aid," Nell teased. "Nell," Elsie stammered. I'm just here." "Hold on." Nell shook her head. "I think you're hiding something from me. Is Becca expecting a baby?" "Well," Elsie said, "I can see your confusion. Waiting to become a grandmother at 45 is probably not every woman's dream." "It's like a sentence," Nell remarked. "Nell," Elsie interrupted. "I'm not planning to stop at being a grandmother." "Then I don't understand anything. Who is all this for?" "For me." "Well, not entirely for me. But, wait a minute." Nell squinted. "Are you trying to say that you're preparing to be a mother again?" "Something like that." Elsie nodded. "Are you kidding me?" Nell covered her mouth with her hand. "And you didn't tell me anything. Who's the father? How far along are you? You don't even have a visible belly." "It's been 4 months." Elsie sighed. "The father. Drake. The father. We were together shortly before he left." "Well, you understand. And then, well, you're giving me a shock." "How did Drake react?" "Maybe he changed his mind about the divorce." "Are you kidding?" "He doesn't know anything." "How does he not know?" "Haven't you told anyone?" "Why should he know? He has his own life now." "How many times have I brought up the child's question?" He stated his position. "I can handle it alone." "I have no doubt about that, Elsie," Nell said. "But it's still his child too. I think he has the right to know." "I don't know." Elsie pondered. "He made his choice. On one hand, I understand him. What's the point of living with a woman you feel nothing for? To walk around like a zombie, silently eating, coming back from work to an inhospitable home, accumulating irritation, all this inside. Who would like that? On the other hand." "What's on the other hand?" Elsie thought. What did she lose by losing the familiar routine? She had plenty of time now that she could spend on herself. Soon, there would be a person in her life whom she would love unconditionally, without distractions from all the worldly hustle, other people's desires, and grievances. "You know, Nell," she continued, "the only thing that hurts me about Drake's actions is that he traded me for someone else. As a woman, it's offensive. It's entirely natural. It hit my self-esteem. I won't argue, but let it be. I can't and don't want to influence it. I feel a sense of inner freedom now. Think about it. Drake and I spent a quarter of a century together, and I haven't seen life. Everything was so sterile and correct. Now I have the opportunity to start anew. And this child, God sent it, even though I had given up hope. No, I don't want to talk to Drake, but he'll find out anyway. Elsie, your position is clear, but he's still the father, and he'll probably help financially. I don't want my future daughter to grow up seeing it in fragments. It's easier not to mention him at all. And what will he find out? I'll say the child is not his. He's unlikely to even guess he's the father." "Oh, friend." Nell shook her head. "It's up to you. I won't interfere, but I would still say something." "And how do you imagine that?" "Go to them and announce it right away. I no longer want anything to do with Drake. I just want to live and be happy, not constantly worry that I'm doing something wrong. If I tell him, he'll want to be involved in our daughter's life. Becca grew up to be a wonderful person despite the differences in our parenting approaches with Drake. But we've been through so much because of her antics. Now I have a chance to do everything the way I think is right." "That sounds too selfish. Don't you think so?" Nell smiled. "Well, let it be. Elsie exclaimed. "I've lived exclusively for others for so many years. Do I have the right to lie for myself?" "Okay," Nell sighed. "That's true too. By the way, when is the court hearing?" "Tomorrow," Elsie said. "Can you believe it's been 2 months already?" "Listen, why are you getting divorced through the court? You have an adult daughter. No more claims to each other. Or can't you divide the property?" "Yes," Elsie laughed. "Imagine. I asked Drake to leave me the apartment. I don't need anything else. No cars, no house. But he insists. By law, everything must be divided. And that's it. Why does he need this apartment? He can easily afford 5 of them himself." Nell wondered. "That's the point. I can't understand it at all." Apparently, his lady friend persuaded him. She probably realizes that the apartment is extraordinary. You can get a lot from selling it. And I don't care about the price. This is my home, and I'm used to it. Why should I go somewhere else? Well, I told Drake that I wouldn't agree to a divorce if he insists. Do you think the court will be on your side? I don't know. I consulted with a lawyer. He said that if I refuse everything else, and the value of this is equivalent to half of the apartment's value, the court will be on my side. He's collecting the papers. Well, it's easier to reach an agreement with Drake. I'm telling you, tell him you're expecting a child. He'll agree to everything right away. He always seemed decent. And dividing the apartment isn't your style somehow. Okay, everything will be decided tomorrow. Sooner, the better. I don't even want to think about it." In the corridor before the courtroom, Elsie sat on a bench, reading the latest news. She didn't notice when Drake approached her. "Well, hello," he greeted. "Are you still determined?" "And you?" Elsie replied. She noticed out of the corner of her eye a young red-haired woman standing nearby, staring at them intently. "Is this your Alice?" "Ha!" Drake turned around. "Yes, damn it. I asked her not to come up." "Elsie, forgive me. I've already forgotten everything. It just annoys me that you're stubborn and don't want a divorce on my terms. It costs you nothing. But you seem to be proving something to your new chick. It's foolish. Don't insult us." "Who's insulting?" "I'm just telling the truth. I didn't think you were so petty. By the way, you've gained weight," Drake suddenly observed, flustered. Elsie buttoned up her cardigan to hide her slightly protruding belly. "It's because of nerves," she explained. "I eat a lot, especially in the evenings." "You're a psychologist. You should know how to deal with nerves." "You're an architect," Elsie sarcastically remarked. "You should know how to build a life." "All right, that's enough." Drake nervously licked his lips. "If you don't want it the easy way, then there will be problems." "You didn't want it the easy way yourself," Elsie said, and walked away from her husband just as her lawyer arrived. The courtroom was stuffy. Elsie felt a wave of nausea, but she tried to overcome it. The judge turned out to be a gloomy middle-aged man who kept shaking his shoulders. Seeing him, the lawyer rolled his eyes. It turned out that a completely different judge was supposed to hear the case. But she suddenly went on sick leave, transferring everything to her colleague. According to the lawyer, his reputation was not the best. There was little hope that he would be sympathetic and listen to Elsie's demands. Listening as the judge read through the case materials, Elsie glanced at her husband. He shamelessly grinned. Drake knew that his soon-to-be ex-wife had nothing to hope for. His lawyer had probably already informed him of the potential advantages of such a judge. Elsie's head was spinning. The stuffiness was overwhelming. Even the open window didn't let in enough air. Elsie wasn't paying attention to what was happening around her. All her thoughts were centered around the life growing inside her. She could already envision those little fingers and squinted eyes. She saw her daughter sleeping in a crib with a carousel of funny animals overhead. "Mrs. Paxton." The judge's voice interrupted Elsie's contemplation. "Do you have anything to add? State the reason for denying your husband a divorce." "Elsie," her lawyer called. "I must say, our chances are slim. It seems the judge is not inclined to compromise." "Your Honor, Elsie suddenly said, "I wanted to say that. I cannot grant a divorce. I am expecting a child." A silence fell in the courtroom. Drake froze with his mouth open. Even the court stenographer looked up. "Elsie, what are you talking about?" Drake suddenly came to life. "What child? Please maintain silence." The judge interrupted. "Mrs. Paxton, please explain. This information is not in my documents. I found out after Drake said he was leaving. I didn't want to tell him." "Are you saying this is my child?" objected her husband. "Whose else could it be?" Elsie retorted. "Your Honor, I request you to take this fact into account. I understand I should have said it earlier, but due to the emergence of new circumstances, I declare the court session closed. According to the current legislation, spouses are given 2 months for reconciliation. If that does not happen, a new hearing will be scheduled. Please attach supporting documents to the case." When Elsie exited the courtroom, Drake immediately approached her, blocking her way. "Have you lost your mind?" he asked bewilderedly. "Why didn't you tell me anything, and how would that change anything?" Elsie replied indifferently. "What do you mean? This is my child." "Oh, now you are talking. Not long ago, you didn't want to hear anything about it. Does Becca know?" "No. I haven't told our daughter anything. I was afraid she would immediately spill everything to you." "Elsie, we need to decide something. Are you sure the child is mine?" "Are you kidding me? Who else could it be from?" "The Holy Spirit. I got pregnant after our anniversary. I have no one else. If you doubt it, let's do a DNA testament, but you'll be wasting your time. You won't get the child anyway. She'll be mine and mine alone." "A daughter. Do you already know the gender?" "Wait. So you're on the 4th or 5th month already?" "Yes," Elsie said dryly. "Drake, listen, let's resolve everything quickly. I want you to disappear from our lives. If you want a child, let your Alice give birth to it. And this girl will never know about you. Don't make things up. You can't forbid me from seeing her. Do you like going to court? Well, you'll have this entertainment. But keep in mind, I'll get what I want in any case. Don't think everything can be bought. You've shown yourself as an immoral person. You abandoned your pregnant wife and went to a younger lover. I won't spare money on lawyers to achieve my goal." "I didn't know about your pregnancy." Drake tried to justify himself. "And if you had known, would you have stayed?" "Don't make me laugh. You've had a lover for a long time. Don't even think about reconciliation now." "Elsie, forget it. There's nothing between us anymore. When it's all over, I'll ask you not to appear in our lives anymore. And don't try to bribe me later. I might not even file for child support. Though, honestly, I want to spite you." "How much is it?" "Half of your income will go to the child." "Well, it's better than your red head. Let's see what you'll say later." "All you had to do was leave me the apartment. We would all be living peacefully now." She quickly walked away, not allowing Drake to say a word to her. Along the way, she encountered the red-haired girl again, who was arrogantly smirking. But upon seeing Elsie, she immediately shrank. "Don't even hope that everything will come so easily," Elsie told her. Elsie got what she wanted. When the reconciliation period for the spouses passed, a new court hearing was scheduled. This time Elsie initiated the divorce. The judge, a full-figured lady with curly hair, quickly sided with the deceived wife. She not only granted all of Elsie's requests, but also ordered Drake to pay child support for the future child. Elsie felt awful. She had never been a mean person, but circumstances forced her to play this role. Her relationship with Drake was irreparably damaged. Alice even called her several times, but Elsie hung up immediately, unwilling to have any contact with that woman. A few months later, Elsie was due to give birth. When Becca learned about her mother's pregnancy, she immediately came, dropping everything. "Mom, why did you hide this from me? I'm going to have a little sister." Who would have thought? I was completely lost. "Dear, I was afraid you would tell your father. I wouldn't have told him anything. Becca objected. Do you think just because he spoiled me in my childhood, I would take his side? Nothing like that. I'm used to judging people by their actions. And he treated you so badly, succumbing to base desires. I disagree with that. And now, it turns out, you wiped the floor with his lady. Does that mean Dad has to give half of his income to child support? Well, not half. We agreed on 10% of the total. The funniest thing is, this fool even decided to doubt his paternity. When the daughter is born, he intends to conduct a DNA test and, if necessary, challenge the court's verdict. I never thought our dad would turn out to be so vulnerable. His lady seems to be influencing him in not the best way. Mom, have you already come up with a name for my little sister? No, daughter. I decided that I would name her when she is born. I can't plan such things in advance. When you were still in my womb, your father and I considered many names. He was even ready to name you Koreathride. Really? Becca laughed. Seriously. It seems like he completely lost his mind due to stress. And in the end, when you were born, we even forgot what names we were coming up with. I look at you and understand. Becca, my little Becca. Dad told me a completely different story. The girl smirked. He said some actress inspired him. I can't remember her last name. He claimed I looked just like her when I first appeared in the world. Well, that's a joke in his style. Mom, do you need any help? Don't even think about quitting your job. I can handle it myself. Or do you think your mother is already too old? Come on. Mom, Becca said, you're still young. Just how are you going to juggle a baby and work? I've already figured it out. Elsie said, I'll conduct sessions at home, convert Dad's office into my workspace, and hire a nanny. I've already made a deal with a woman I used to work with. A very decent lady, a born educator, raised her own children and grandchildren. She was thrilled when I approached her. Plus, I'll only need help during working hours. I'll tackle other problems as they come. After the conversation with her daughter, Elsie felt relieved. She was pleased that all the efforts put into raising Becca had not been in vain. No matter how hard Drake tried to spoil his daughter, he only succeeded temporarily. Even in this situation, Becca sided with her mother. Having seen a few patients, Elsie headed out for a walk. For some reason, she felt like spending her lunch break on something other than eating another portion of pasta, which she had been leaning on in recent days. She had gained a bit of weight on her face, and if Elsie could still come to terms with her stomach, her rounded cheeks seemed ugly to her. She decided to take a stroll in the park, located a block away from her office. On the way, she bought herself a large cup of freshly squeezed juice. Sitting on a bench, she squinted at the bright sun and inhaled the scent of the moist leaves. It was September. This month turned out to be unusually warm. Elsie was observing everything around her while sipping her juice. Suddenly, she was interrupted by an approaching man. Excuse me. He addressed her. Have you seen a phone around here? I was sitting here about 15 minutes ago. I probably left it. Honestly, I didn't notice. Elsie replied. Elsie stood up to help the man find his phone. Together they searched the area but found nothing. Could you call it for me? He asked. Yes, of course, Elsie agreed. After a few seconds, a sound came from somewhere in the grass. The man bent down and picked up the phone, didn't even notice it falling. Thank you so much for your help, he said. You're welcome. Elsie smiled. I apologize for being tactless. The stranger suddenly said, Are you pregnant? Isn't it obvious? Elsie asked. You know, with women these days, it's not always easy to tell right away. And why do you ask? Elsie suddenly became concerned. I don't know how intriguing my offer might be. You see, I'm an obstetrician gynecologist. Not the best place for advertising services. I understand, but I would like to recommend my clinic to you. Oh, I see. Elsie smiled. Honestly, it's a bit strange, but I can't say I'm completely satisfied with my current doctor. Is your clinic good? Certainly. The man nodded. Of course, any owner would say that, but I genuinely have an excellent clinic. Both the doctors working with me and the entire staff. Here, take my business card. Just in case you decide, I'd be happy to have you as one of our patients. Thank you. Of course, Elsie took the card extended by the man, Dr. Aaron Cole. Oh my. Is that Dr. Cole? She exclaimed. Have you heard about me? Surely when you were looking for a doctor to oversee your pregnancy. He replied, no, it's not about that. Elsie was a bit flustered. Don't you remember me? To be honest, no, he admitted. You used to work at the 7th maternity hospital. Oh, that was so long ago. I had just finished my internship. It was 25 years ago. You delivered my firstborn, Paxton Elsie. Elsie joyfully exclaimed. Memories rushed back to her. That day seemed to be the most nightmarish of all. The contractions made her wish for death. And when they brought her to the hospital and informed her that a man, a very young one at that, would be delivering her baby, she was ready to disappear. Contrary to her expectations, the doctor turned out to be a professional. Moreover, he constantly cracked jokes, trying to distract Elsie from the pain. Thanks to him, Becca came into the world. What a coincidence. Aaron sincerely marveled. So, fate has brought us together again. Aaron, it would be an honor to be under your care again. You should see what a wonderful daughter I've raised. Well, that's your merit, not mine. So, are you coming? I will. Elsie nodded confidently. I don't believe in simple coincidences. Even today, I usually have lunch near work, and suddenly I felt like taking a stroll. And here I am, meeting the person who delivered my baby a quarter of a century ago. And he's offering his services again. It can only be fate. Think about it. So many years have passed. I would have never thought you were my old patient. You look young. If your daughter is already 25, you can't be less than 40. And I'd say 35 at most. Oh, stop it. Elsie blushed. 35. If only you knew. My husband left me, calling me old. Can you believe it? He left. Aaron was surprised. That can't be. And did he really leave a pregnant woman? Oh, it's a long story. No, he didn't know about the baby. He just left for a younger lover. I wasn't particularly upset. Living with someone for many years, and then realizing you never really loved him. But life goes on. When I learned about impending motherhood, it felt like a switch. I immediately wanted to change something, grow somewhere. Even with work, I wanted to make some changes. And what do you do for a living? If it's not a secret. The man inquired. I'm a child psychologist. Although, more often than not, I find myself solving problems not of the children but of their parents. A noble profession. So, it seems we are colleagues in some way. Apparently, yes, and colleagues in a similar situation. The man added sadly. How so? I recently went through a divorce too, under similar circumstances. I lived with my wife for 11 years, and suddenly she asks for a divorce. She's tired that I spend all my time at work, finding it hard to handle everything on her own. At first, I didn't even understand what she found so challenging. We don't have children. It just happened that way. I provided for her all our life. She had care and love. Of course, running the clinic takes a lot of effort and time. So, she decided to have her affairs on the side. It feels absurd to find oneself in such a situation. We always discussed everything. Could we not prevent all this somehow? So, you loved her, and she betrayed you. Well, essentially, that's what happened. I had a hard time coping with the divorce. Thought everything had lost its meaning, but managed to pull myself together. Just then, our clinic opened a new branch. No time to suffer. And now, I hardly even think about it. That's how it goes. Elsie, suddenly said Aaron. Since today is such a strange day, I'll take the risk and make you another offer. Maybe you'll agree. I invite you to dinner tonight, right away." Elsie was surprised. "Why not? I really enjoy talking to you. I have a free evening, and a table is reserved at the restaurant. If you have nothing planned, don't deny me the pleasure of your company. I don't even know." Elsie blushed. "Wouldn't it be strange? Why? It's perfectly natural for two adults to have dinner together and discuss some important matters. By important matters, I assume you mean this." She gestured to her stomach. "Why not? I'll tell you all about our clinic. We can choose a doctor. Although I could personally take care of you." Elsie blushed. She couldn't understand whether this man was flirting with her or viewing her solely as a subject of professional interest. It would be odd to flirt with a mature, pregnant woman, and a dinner at a restaurant wasn't quite suitable for professional interest. But Elsie liked Aaron. He was charming, and his soft smile was infectious. She had no idea what this interaction would bring, but her soul desperately craved positive emotions. Therefore, she accepted the doctor's invitation. "Where can I pick you up?" Aaron asked. "I'll manage on my own." Elsie replied. "No, in your condition, it's better not to stress on the road." He insisted. "Okay." She smiled, providing him with her dress. "What's happening?" Elsie thought. "Finishing work. I need some kind of dress for this. I can't just go to a restaurant like this. And with a stomach, a dress is a nightmare." "Okay, I'll go look for something." In the store, Elsie experienced genuine despair. Everything she liked looked terrible on her figure. She was about to leave when a young consultant brought her a stunning outfit. "Here, please take a look at this option." The girl showcased Elsie a loose dark blue dress. She went into the fitting room and came out very pleased. "Perfect," she happily announced. "I didn't even think I could find something. And in this, the belly is not so noticeable. I'll take it." Elsie quickly drove home, styled her hair, and applied makeup. As soon as she finished, Aaron called and said he had already arrived. When Elsie came out of the entrance, the man helped her into the car. "You look fantastic," he smiled. "Even feeling somewhat inadequate next to you." "Oh, please." Elsie laughed. Aaron was underestimating himself. The man looked excellent. "How do you feel about Italian cuisine?" "Hopefully, positively. The restaurant we're heading to has an excellent chef. He's Italian but has been living here for many years. He believes that locals are obligated to get acquainted with the authentic cuisine of his homeland. Let me tell you, he does an excellent job. I'd love to try." Elsie nodded. "I won't say I have any preferences. The main thing is that it's delicious." "Well, there definitely won't be any problems with that." The restaurant turned out to be very cozy, with exquisite at-home style delicious dishes. Elsie could finally relax after the hectic weeks. Aaron proved to be a fascinating conversationalist. It seemed that this man could engage in any topic effortlessly. The conversation flowed so naturally, creating the impression that they had known each other for a long time. After dinner, the doctor drove Elsie home. "Well," he began, slightly embarrassed. "Thank you, Elsie, for a wonderful evening. I look forward to seeing you at the clinic. Come whenever it's convenient for you. Just mention my name." "I don't know how to thank you. I had a great time today. I haven't gone out anywhere lately." Elsie expressed her gratitude. "We can arrange such outings periodically. I'm all for it." Aaron suddenly said, "I hope my invitation didn't seem tactless. I see no reason to limit myself in communicating with such a wonderful lady. Moreover, you say you also enjoy it. I'll think about it." Elsie blushed. She felt that her new acquaintance was rushing things. But in one thing, he was right. Elsie enjoyed the conversation. Upon entering her home, Elsie immediately called Nell. She couldn't wait to share her impressions. "Nell," she joyfully said, "you can't imagine what's happening to me." "Elsie, wait. Why are you so excited?" "I met a man today." "Oh," Nell said, "you're really something, my friend." "No, you don't understand." Elsie interrupted her. "It's not like that. You know, there are coincidences in life. Today, I decided to take a walk in the park at lunchtime, which I usually never do. And then, this man comes up to me to introduce himself. Turns out, he delivered my baby. Can you imagine? But the most interesting part is that he's the chief doctor in a private clinic. He offered me to be under his care. Well, that's some doubtful romance, Nell commented. And here I thought you actually got yourself a man. Well, Elsie suddenly said, we actually went out to dinner together. Well, how did you manage that so quickly? Yeah, it happened. He invited. And I thought, why refuse? And you know, I had such a great time. Completely forgot about my problems. Aaron is a very interesting person. Quite gallant. Yes, her friend pondered. And what do you think? Is it serious between you two? Are you kidding? We just met. But I will go to his clinic. I checked it out. It's one of the best establishments. And Aaron Cole himself is a doctor sent from heaven. I don't know. He's certainly interesting. Started taking care of a pregnant woman. He didn't start taking care. We just talked. You could say, professional to professional. Is he married? He was. Divorced a couple of years ago. His wife left for a lover. Can you imagine? Almost like my situation. Ah, so you are friends in misfortune. Well, everything is clear, dear. I feel we'll be celebrating a wedding soon. Oh, come on. You silly. I'm not into that at all. Yeah. And you called me right after you got back from him. Well, that's true. Elsie thought. There's some strange feeling inside me. Or am I just not used to male attention? Well, it's too early to talk about anything. After the conversation with her friend, Elsie took a shower and lay down in bed. She couldn't sleep for a long time, thinking about Aaron. He stirred something inside her. It turned out that Elsie had never really felt a genuine emotion towards a man. Of course, when she and Drake first started dating, there was a certain romantic attachment. Before him, Elsie had other guys, but she never felt anything serious for anyone. The feeling that arose in her soul today was something completely different. But Elsie didn't believe in love at first sight. Such things were the invention of naive girls and die-hard romantics. She didn't consider herself either of those. Gradually, Elsie fell asleep. The next day, she headed to Aaron's clinic. When she mentioned her name, she was immediately escorted to his office. Aaron was sitting at the desk, and the white coat suited him well. Here I am, Elsie said timidly. Elsie, glad to see you. Honestly, I thought I scared you off yesterday. Aaron remarked. Not at all. She laughed. I won't deny it. Everything seemed a bit strange, but life is a tricky thing. I think we should take everything that happens as it is. Great perspective. So, where shall we start? I brought all the certificates and documents I had. Here, please take a look. She handed Aaron a thick folder with papers. The doctor carefully examined the contents, occasionally furrowing his brow or nodding. Well, he began after reviewing all the documents. As I see it, the pregnancy is progressing normally. No pathologies or reasons to worry. Let's do an ultrasound, and then we'll see. Okay, Elsie agreed. She really liked the service at the hospital. The doctors here were friendly and highly qualified. She visited a couple of rooms, underwent some tests, and returned to Aaron. So, how was it? He winked. Amazing. Honestly, I thought all private clinics were more or less the same. Before this, I had been observed in a similar facility. But yours is entirely different. You can immediately feel that the doctors are interested in the result, not just earning money. I'm glad you noticed. When I opened the clinic, I personally selected the staff, down to the janitor. It was crucial for me that patients felt as comfortable and safe as possible. And how did you end up in private medicine? Anyway, I understand. Maybe it's a silly question. Surely it's about money. But not everyone. Aaron shook his head. You see, my ex-wife, well, she couldn't have children. It's absurd. A husband, a renowned gynecologist, unable to solve the problem in his own family. When I realized that state medicine was powerless, I decided to take matters into my own hands. At some point, Alice accepted that she would never become a mother. No matter how much I tried to convince her that it wasn't all lost, it was in vain. We even considered adopting a child, but she closed herself off somehow. And then, I don't know why she gave up so early. She's only 32. There's always a chance. But, apparently, she got tired, immersed herself in work, started renovations, and then eventually left. Perhaps she blamed me for everything. You know, sometimes something clicks in your head, and despite all the tests and common sense, you start blaming those around you for your problems. Alice convinced herself that she couldn't have children specifically with me. It logically followed that she would want to find a new man. Do you still love her? Elsie suddenly asked, seeing Aaron's eyes dim. No. He shook his head. I don't think so. After all, I couldn't forgive her betrayal. I tried to get her back at first, but when I saw her with that architect, I decided to give up. With which architect? Elsie asked. With the one she left me for. Honestly, I don't even remember his name now. But at one point, I wanted to punch his face. Aaron, may I ask, and it might sound strange to you, did your ex-wife have red hair? Yes. Why? The doctor was surprised. It seems she's with my ex-husband. In general, it's even funny. But they are together. That can't be. Aaron jumped up from his chair. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. There are just too many coincidences. Her name is Alice. The age fits. She left for an architect 2 years ago. Everything adds up. Do you have any photos of him? Elsie took out her phone to find a picture of Drake. Here, take a look. Is this the man she left for? Aaron examined the photo of Elsie's ex-husband for a long moment. Then he wearily sank back into his chair and handed her the phone. Yes, I'm afraid to admit it, but that's the guy. Well, isn't this news? Elsie furrowed her brow. It turns out we're truly friends in misfortune. Don't you think there are too many coincidences in the last few days? I don't know what to think, Aaron said. Elsie could see that her revelation had greatly affected his mood. She felt uneasy herself. Aaron, listen, she began suddenly. Does it change anything? I mean, who left for whom? You're still here. And I. The last words were spoken with a pause. Aaron noticed it and looked intently at his patient. He gazed at her for a long moment, then unexpectedly smiled. You're right, Elsie. Everyone has their own life. It's worth moving forward, not regretting what happened. Let's meet again in a more informal setting. Elsie gave birth to a wonderful girl named Julia. Aaron was the one who delivered the baby. By that time, they had already started dating. Elsie wasn't ready to live together just yet. She didn't want to rush things, but it seemed very serious to her. Aaron was a straightforward person. He expressed his thoughts and desires clearly. Perhaps that's what captivated Elsie, and he took care of her beautifully. Pregnancy didn't bother him at all. On the contrary, he protected her and tried his best to make her pregnancy easier. When Julia was born, Aaron was as happy as if his own child had come into the world. Elsie, he said as he entered the room, and she was nursing the baby, pressing her to her chest. I think we need to have a serious talk. What's going on? Elsie whispered. Elsie, don't argue with me now, but when you're discharged, you and the baby will come live with me. Oh, come on. Elsie tried to resist. Stop it. You have a double responsibility now. It's not good to stay alone. I've already arranged everything with the nanny. I gave her the keys to prepare the apartment. No, Aaron, it's too early. Let's take it slow. Or you can move in with us. No problem. The doctor almost shouted, but stopped in time. It doesn't matter where to live. I just want to be with you and the baby all the time. And it's safer that way. Safer? What do you mean? Honestly, I'm worried that your ex-husband will insist on seeing his daughter. If he suddenly shows up, I want a reliable person nearby. We've sorted things out with him. I don't think he'll come. Don't underestimate him. Men rarely give up. The fact that he so easily accepted your conditions is suspicious in itself. Do you really think so? Elsie frowned. I assume. Aaron smiled and kissed the woman on the forehead. All right, rest for now, and I'll come by later. For Elsie's discharge from the maternity ward, Nell and Becca arrived. The women stood holding a huge bouquet of flowers and a beautifully wrapped box. Mom, Becca said joyfully, seeing her mother with the baby in her arms. Show my little sister quickly. Your dream has come true, Elsie. Nell teared up. Becca, step aside. I also want to see. After all, she's my niece, and probably soon to be your goddaughter. The women were admiring the baby, and Elsie was laughing. All right, ladies, let's go, suddenly said Aaron, appearing next to them. It's cold here. We don't want the little one to catch a cold. Oh, said Nell. Of course, let's get into the car quickly. They all got into Aaron's SUV together. Becca, with her mother and the baby, settled in the back seat, and Nell sat next to Aaron. Elsie's best friend kept a close eye on the man throughout the journey. Elsie is so lucky, she thought. She found such a man. I told her that happiness would come. She never listens to me. Aaron is great. He accepted her and the baby, and it seems he's ready to do everything for them. Just hope Drake doesn't show up. When they approached the entrance and started getting out of the car, a man from a nearby car got out and walked towards them. Mom, Becca tugged at her mother's coat. Just don't get nervous. It's Dad. Oh God. Elsie got nervous. Where? Okay. Quickly go inside with Aaron, and we'll distract Nell. But it was already too late. Drake approached closely, taking advantage of the fact that Aaron was at that moment taking out a baby carrier and some packages from the trunk. Hello, Elsie, Drake said. Hi, the ex-wife replied. Why are you here? I heard you're being discharged today. Wanted to see the little one. Drake. Elsie held the baby closer to herself. At that moment, Aaron approached and shielded his women with himself. How can I help? He asked Drake. You nothing. I came to see my daughter. I think Elsie made it clear to you that it's not going to happen. If you disagree, take it to court. You like solving things legally. You don't need to tell me. I came to my wife, and I'll talk to her. To your ex-wife. Drake. Don't forget, Elsie said. Aaron said it right. If you don't like something, go to court. Until then, I decide what we talk about. She quickly headed towards the entrance, accompanied by Aaron and Nell. Drake wanted to follow, but Becca held him back. Dad, stop. Can't you see she's not in the mood for you right now? Wait a bit. I'm sure Mom won't be angry with you forever. You think? Drake said. She seems to have become such a witch. Well, it's your fault. Mom is not a witch at all. I think this pregnancy has taken its toll on her. And of course, your actions. Give her some time. I'll try to convince her. Okay, all right, sweetheart. Drake nodded. And you, since you're in town, could at least visit. Alice really wants to meet you. I don't think it's right, Dad. Why not? She's a good woman. Don't judge her so harshly. Okay, Dad, I'll think about it. I'll try to stop by. I have to leave soon, though. Work. Okay. I put the baby to sleep. Elsie sighed, entering the kitchen where the others were waiting. I can't believe she's here. So tiny and real. Wait, she'll start growing soon. Nell laughed. Well, Nell, come on. Children don't grow that fast. Oh, you don't know much, Nell replied. You'll remember my words when you have your own. All right, ladies, Elsie interrupted them. Let's celebrate. I brought tomato juice. Let's have a party. And what did I get myself into? Nell said. Ladies. Aaron entered the kitchen, carrying a huge bag. The delivery has arrived. Let's have a feast. Aaron, how do you feel about tomato juice, and why not? Are they already pouring it here? The man asked. Yes, Mom is the bartender today. Becca pointed to Elsie, pouring tomato juice into glasses. By the evening, everyone dispersed, leaving Elsie alone with Aaron. The baby woke up a couple of times, but after getting her share of milk, she would peacefully coo again. Aaron, just think. Elsie started the conversation. Can you imagine he just showed up like that? That's what I've been telling you. Think about it. Maybe we should move to my place. No. Elsie responded hesitantly. You're nearby, and I have nothing to fear. But we need to resolve this issue somehow. Do you think if he takes it to court, I'll have to allow him to see our daughter? Not necessarily. You're the mother, and your opinion will be given priority. I just don't want him to be involved in her life at all. I can even refuse child support. I don't need his money. Let me consult with a lawyer. Okay. Elsie sighed. Julia turned 6 months old. It was May. Elsie had a day off, so she decided to take a walk with her daughter in the park. Aaron was at work, and Elsie asked the nanny to help with cooking. She wanted to enjoy the stroll. Once, this park was a favorite spot for walks in their family. Drake always tried to climb an old tree, amusing Becca. Back then, Elsie felt she was happier than anyone in the world. But now, walking with the stroller, she realized that the moment of happiness had arrived precisely at this moment. Julia peacefully dozed in the stroller, and a light breeze circled in the air. Elsie! A male voice came from behind. The woman turned around, and Drake was approaching her quickly. Wait, Drake. Elsie coolly replied. Well, what else do you need? I can't go on like this. Let's settle everything, like adults. Quiet. Don't shout. Elsie interrupted him in a loud whisper. You'll wake the baby. Drake froze, peering into the stroller where Julia slept. She's beautiful, he murmured entranced. So much like Becca. Of course, she is. The parents are the same. Drake, listen, I'll say it again since you don't seem to understand. Julia is not your daughter. She's mine. Sure, you're her biological father, but it means absolutely nothing. You didn't want a child. You didn't want to be with me. Why try to go against your own principles now? Everything has changed. Elsie, what has changed? Did you break up with Alice? No, Drake said sadly. I love Alice, but she can't have children. Elsie suddenly asked. Yes. How do you know? Her ex-husband wondered. I have my sources. So, it's true. So Aaron wasn't involved. She muttered to herself almost inaudibly. What? Drake heard. What does your Aaron have to do with this? It's a long story. Ask your lady. I don't understand you. You don't need to understand anything. Drake, please, don't interfere with us. You have your life now, and we have ours. I'm sorry, but there's no place for you in it. Elsie, please, what do you want? I'll get on my knees. Goodbye. Drake. Elsie started to walk away from him quickly. At some point, she thought her ex-husband was catching up, but when she turned around, she saw him still on his knees on the cobblestones, in his expensive coat. Soon, the court hearing took place. Drake filed documents without informing Elsie. During the session, her ex-husband was accompanied by renowned lawyers, but Elsie did not appear alone either. The hearing was brief. The judge sided with the mother. Although the child was born out of wedlock, both parents, the father's conduct was viewed as immoral. Moreover, Elsie mentioned multiple times that Drake didn't want to become a father again. Additionally, she declined child support. Despite Drake's lawyer's efforts, the mother's opinion prevailed, and Drake was denied visitation rights with his daughter. Exiting the courtroom, Elsie caught her ex-husband's gaze. He stood utterly lost. For a split second, Elsie felt a pang of pity, but the feeling quickly passed. See, Drake, not everything is solved with money, she said. Don't be so sure. Elsie, "Don't be," he replied and walked away. For some reason, those words deeply unsettled Elsie. There was something in her ex-husband's tone and gaze that triggered concern. She immediately informed Aaron. "Okay," he reasoned. "I think we shouldn't dismiss him entirely. Today's situation might push him to desperate measures." "What are you talking about?" Elsie asked fearfully. "That's the thing. I don't know what he's capable of. But we need to be extremely cautious. I insist again that you move in with me. I don't like all of this." Elsie trembled. Drake's gaze had scared her profoundly. She herself didn't know what her ex-husband was capable of. After some hesitation, Elsie agreed to move. They took only the essentials with them. Aaron said he would send movers soon to transfer the rest. When Elsie found herself in her beloved man's apartment, she immediately felt safe. Everything in his home exuded confidence. "Did you and Alice live together here?" she asked. "No, of course not." Aaron shook his head. "I left her the apartment. She started renovations there before the divorce. I didn't want to deprive her of that. She became obsessed, especially after the impossibility of having children." By the way, Elsie suddenly remembered. "Do you recall how I told you about meeting Drake in the park?" "Yeah, he doesn't even know that Alice is your ex-wife." "Well, we started talking about Julia, and I directly asked if his woman could have children. He was very surprised, wondering how I knew about this issue." "Looks like I was right after all." Aaron scratched his chin. "I have the impression that Drake really wants a child, and Alice can't give him that. So, he's trying to establish contact with Julia. At the same time, he said he loves Alice and won't just leave her." "Well, that's a problem. Let's hope her obsession doesn't rub off on him. Honestly, it's a bit scary." Contrary to Elsie and Aaron's concerns, Drake didn't take any action. It was as if he disappeared, making no reminders of his presence. "Aaron, my love." Elsie's voice sounded concerned. "I really don't want to burden you." "What happened?" "Elsie, it's all fine. I have a patient scheduled to arrive at 5, and I can't refuse. It's a problematic boy. I need to stay longer. Could you pick up Julia from daycare and take her to her activities? I'll be free by 6 and can pick her up myself afterward." "Of course, dear. No problem. Just call them and tell them Dad will pick her up. Nowadays, all kinds of people exist." "Yes, of course, I'll inform them now." Elsie and Aaron got married when Julia turned 1. The man officially adopted her, recognizing her as his daughter. He grew deeply fond of the child. Now, Julia was already 5 years old. The girl was growing quickly and showed remarkable abilities. At the age of 3, her parents enrolled her in Chinese language classes for the youngest. Despite her very young age, she displayed interest and decent skills. The teacher always spoke highly of her little student, using her as an example for the other children. This flattered Elsie greatly. For a year, her child attended these language courses, and now the woman was seriously considering enrolling her in drawing lessons. Aaron, of course, protested. He thought the workload would be excessive for a child her age. But the energetic Julia was ready to argue with her stepfather, showcasing her achievements. "Hello, this is Elsie Cole. I wanted to let you know that Julia's dad will pick her up today. Yes, I'm being delayed at work." "All right, thank you." The patient Elsie was expecting was a challenging child. The boy's parents held high positions in the city administration and some ministry. Despite being only 6 years old, the child's emotional state was extremely unstable. While problems often stemmed from parents, this situation was not so straightforward. Elsie faced a difficult evening. When they brought the boy in, she turned off her phone and asked Tiffany not to connect her with anyone. The session drained Elsie. The child needed a psychiatrist, but the parents refused to acknowledge their child had such problems. Elsie was willing to do everything in her power. After arranging the next consultation with the child's mother, she turned her phone back on. Immediately, she received numerous SMS messages from Aaron. With a grim premonition, Elsie opened the first message. Elsie, call urgently. About 20 more messages followed, all with similar content. What happened there? Elsie worried. I hope everyone is alive. She dialed her husband's number, and he answered instantly. Oh, Elsie, finally. Aaron's voice sounded concerned. Aaron, what's going on? Where are you? Where's Julia? I'm at the police station right now. Come urgently. The address. What happened? At the mention of the police station, Elsie began to tremble. What she heard was the most horrifying nightmare. Somehow, regaining her composure, she said, how can she not be there? The teacher said her father took her. Elsie slowly slid to the floor. How did he take her? Come as soon as possible. I'll call a taxi. Don't you dare drive. You're not in the right state. I'm waiting. Elsie replied. Her world crumbled. Elsie understood perfectly that her daughter was not in the hands of criminals. Drake reached the little girl. But how? Another coincidence. Or did he know that today the father was supposed to pick up the girl? No, that seemed like paranoia. Suddenly, Elsie remembered that Aaron had mentioned his ex-wife's obsession. Could it be contagious? What if Drake, too, became obsessed with the idea of having a child? Obviously, they orchestrated this together. Drake would never have dared alone. In any case, action was necessary. If Drake had planned everything so meticulously, he could easily have prepared documents in advance to take his daughter abroad, where all chances for a happy ending could be thwarted. She stumbled out of the taxi. Aaron was already sitting in the investigator's office. According to the testimony of the daycare teacher, a well-dressed man arrived around 5 o'clock, introduced himself as Julia's father. Since Elsie had called in advance, she had no suspicions. Julia obediently went with him. She didn't even ask him for any documents. Elsie asked, apparently, your call was enough. We're looking into it. Tell me, has your ex-husband attempted similar things before? The investigator inquired. No, Elsie answered uncertainly. You see, Aaron interjected. 4 years ago, when Julia was just born, Drake tried to take an active part in her life, but he acted unfairly with Elsie. His wife was categorical and prohibited him from seeing their daughter. Yes, and after the court, I still remember his look. Did he threaten? The investigator asked. No. Well, I wouldn't call it threats. He just looked at me and said something like, you're doing it for nothing. Elsie, for nothing. And then did he try to contact you? That's the thing. No, we almost immediately moved. He didn't even know where we lived. But he didn't call, didn't keep tabs. If that's what you mean. I see. The investigator noted down something in his notepad. Listen. Aaron suddenly said, I don't know if it's relevant, but my ex-wife once got fixated on the idea of having a child. Physiologically, she couldn't become a mother. We spent a lot of effort and resources to solve this problem. Okay, fine. But what's the relevance here? She's living with Drake now. Apparently, they share some kind of obsession. Both of them want a child so badly that they resorted to a crime. I won't believe that Alice didn't know about Drake's plans to kidnap our daughter. Now, this is getting more interesting. Quite a series you've got. All right, we'll figure it out. I need all their possible addresses and contacts. Go home for now. As soon as anything comes up, I'll inform you immediately. The spouses headed home. Throughout the journey, Elsie sobbed, and Aaron didn't even attempt to console her. Aaron, I'm so scared, she exclaimed. What if he takes Julia abroad? Then we'll never see her again. I don't think he'll do that. Even if he tried, there are alerts for him at all airports. Thank goodness I arrived almost immediately after him and raised the alarm. Now I blame myself for being about 10 minutes late. You're not to blame, Aaron. It's all my fault. I should have picked up Julia myself. How am I going to live now? Elsie, try to calm down. It's too early to think about such things. I believe the investigators will quickly track down Drake and Alice. It's not that easy to disappear without a trace in our time. But what if they prepared well in advance? I don't rule out that possibility. You know what? Let's hire a private detective. I've worked with one before, and he was very helpful. Really? I thought that only happened in movies. Are you kidding? I can call him right now and make arrangements. Do you want me to? Of course, I do. All I dream about is to hug my daughter as soon as possible. As promised, Aaron contacted a private detective. 40 minutes later, a sturdy-looking man in his 40s stood in their apartment. He attentively listened to the spouses, made necessary notes, and immediately got to work. Elsie wasn't particularly hopeful. She had fallen into a state of deep despair. Aaron didn't know how to help her. He silently watched as his wife paced around the apartment, spent a long time in the nursery, and cried. He, too, felt uneasy. Although Julia wasn't his biological daughter, he had become deeply attached to the little girl who called him Dad. The incident demoralized them both. Deep down, Aaron believed that not all was lost, even though he understood that in such a situation, hoping for success wasn't advisable. It's been 2 weeks since Julia's abduction. The police have been unable to trace the kidnappers. Drake and Alice seem to have vanished into thin air. Officially, they haven't left the country, but considering the man's capabilities, they could have easily done so using alternative routes. Elsie became increasingly withdrawn. She couldn't work, lost a significant amount of weight, and even behaved extremely reserved with Aaron. She didn't leave the apartment and refused visitors. Not even Nell could engage her in conversation. Aaron. She turned to him. We need to do something. This can't go on for long. What does your detective say? He's hit a dead end. Can you imagine? No traces of this couple whatsoever. Obviously, they meticulously planned this crime for a long time. Oh, poor Julia. Nell exclaimed, upset. Just imagine yourself in her shoes. Alone, far from her beloved parents, in the company of 2 completely strangers. The little girl is probably crying all the time. It's been 2 weeks already. I can't imagine how she must be feeling now. I just don't understand how someone can disappear without a trace in the modern world. There are cameras everywhere, phones. You can track a card eventually. Or did he withdraw all the cash? Yes, he took out the money. The detective mentioned it shortly before the abduction. He emptied his accounts. How he's moving around with such a pile of cash is unclear. But the detective believes that's precisely why it's unlikely the kidnappers have left the country. Most likely, they are hiding somewhere, possibly in another city. How do we find them? Nell exclaimed, throwing her hands up. At this rate, Elsie will end up in the hospital. Aaron, do something. Nell, what can I do? I'm not some superhero, just an ordinary person. If I could, I would have done everything already. But here, I am absolutely powerless. You know, the weirdest thing is that Drake even stopped contacting Becca. Not a single call, even though they were getting along well. What's strange about that? He can't afford to reveal himself over trivial matters right now. He perfectly understands that even a brief call could give away his location. No, Nell, this man is no fool. One thing bothers me. How did Drake know that it wouldn't be Elsie picking up Julia? He wouldn't have acted without reason. That's quite simple. Aaron smirked. My detective found out very quickly. Tiffany, Elsie's secretary, was leaking all the information to him. He paid her well for any details about Elsie's life. So, when she overheard our conversation in which Elsie asked me to pick up our daughter, she immediately passed everything on to Drake. What a betrayal. And she worked with Elsie for many years. It's all about money. No, Aaron said wearily. People, by nature, are greedy. Does Elsie know? I told her. But I think she's currently incapable of processing any information. Time passed, but nothing changed. The whereabouts of Julia and her kidnappers remained unknown. Gradually, Elsie was coming to her senses, but her psyche was severely shaken. When a year had passed since the abduction, Elsie already realized that getting her daughter back was unlikely. Somehow, she needed to try to start living again. "Aaron," she said, stepping out of the bedroom, "I can't take it anymore. I feel like I need to somehow let go of the situation. A year has passed. Nothing has changed. I don't even know if my daughter is alive or not." Elsie, her husband, embraced her. "All we have left is hope and faith. No matter how circumstances unfold, we need to keep living." "But I don't want to," Elsie cried. "Without Julia, nothing makes sense at all." "Listen, dear," Aaron tried to reassure her. "You have Becca, me, and yourself. After all, I'm not asking you to give up and just forget about Julia. But sitting here aimlessly like this, will that help? The detective is still working. Of course, finding anything is practically impossible. But we continue the search. You need to somehow recover. How about we go somewhere? What if something becomes known? What if we leave and she appears?" "Dear, that's unlikely. I understand you're a mother. Your heart doesn't allow you to think about yourself. But believe me, right now, taking care of your mental well-being is the best decision. Besides, if anything becomes known, we'll come back immediately. You understand that, don't you, Aaron?" "I can't." "You can. Right now, you're just afraid. You just need a distraction. I can't watch my beloved woman fade away before my eyes. Here's the thing. In the past, when I felt down, I used to go to a particular place. There's a special energy there. It always helped me gather my thoughts. Let's go for a week. Maybe it'll help." "Where is it?" Elsie asked with faint interest. "It's in Sandoros. I was born there. And then when I started school, we moved here. But I used to go there often. There's the sea, a wonderful bay, mountains. It's the right season now. The weather is fantastic. And there aren't many people. Hardly any tourists go there at the end of April. Besides, I'd like to show you the places where I was born. Have you ever been there?" "No. We started traveling abroad right away. If we went to the seaside, it was Bulgaria or Turkey. Even more so. You have no idea what you've missed. There are such places. Just delightful." "Well," Elsie still said hesitantly, "if you think we should, let's give it a try. I just feel like I need a little more, and I'll just go crazy." "That's great. I'll buy plane tickets right away. And we'll stay at my friend's place, not a hotel. You don't mind, do you? She's already quite old, but she has such a cute and cozy little house. You'll like it. It's a real family atmosphere." "Interesting." Elsie made an attempt to smile. "I think it might even be better than staying in a noisy hotel. Not sure I want to actively interact with people." A light breeze enveloped Elsie with the sense of the sea and blooming greenery. She could never have imagined it would feel so good here. From the airport, the couple immediately headed to Sandoros. The marvelous Azure Bay, surrounded on both sides by houses drowning in greenery, immediately captured the woman's heart. There were hardly any people on the promenade. She descended the marble steps to the sea and dipped her bare feet into the cool water. "You'll catch a cold," Aaron said. He had already taken the belongings to the house where the couple would spend the next week. "I suggest checking out the restaurant nearby. They cook unbelievably well." "With pleasure," Elsie replied. She put on sandals and took her husband's arm. "I really like it here, Aaron. The scents alone are intoxicating." "Thank you. You haven't seen anything yet. Later, we'll go to the underground bunker. See that mountain on the other shore? It's right inside. Submarines used to be stationed there. And then I suggest touring the local vineyards. It's not the season yet, of course, but the atmosphere there is something else. I'd follow you to the ends of the earth." Elsie pressed against her husband's chest. They visited the restaurant Aaron had mentioned. The fish was excellent. The summer terrace was empty, so nothing disturbed the tranquility of the couple quietly enjoying the beautiful weather, superb cuisine, and each other's company. After lunch, they went back to the house. The old lady, the owner of the house, turned out to be a very friendly and pleasant woman. She immediately led the couple to their room, helped unpack, and showed them her wonderful garden. "I would like to live here," Elsie unexpectedly said. "It's so tempting to just leave everything behind, forget about problems, and simply enjoy life. Why can't it be that simple? Why do people always complicate everything?" "I don't know." Aaron shrugged. "Maybe they find it boring. Or they're in a perpetual search for happiness, not realizing that it lies right on the surface. Just reach out your hand. Do you think we can be happy again? I feel like I'll never be able to reconcile with the fact that Julia is no longer with us." "Darling, you don't need to. You must fight to the end. I'm here, always ready to help and support you. But never give up. There's always a chance. And if you give up, everything will crumble." "But I can't even imagine how and where to look. Even when she grows up, Drake will raise her as his own daughter. She will probably forget about me. Maybe Alice will become a mother figure for her. It's been a year already. She probably has already forgotten that she had another family. Children adapt very quickly to new conditions. The brain simply blocks the memories, and that's it. Don't think of the worst." Aaron hugged his wife tightly. "Let's go to Charville today. Stroll along the waterfront. The city is beautiful. You'll like it. In the evening, it's absolutely stunning. Festive lights everywhere. Words can't describe it." "Why not?" Elsie smiled. By evening, the couple arrived in Charville. It turned out to be very close. Aaron took Elsie to visit meaningful places for him. They wandered along trees framing brightly lit alleys. Elsie got a bit tired and sat down on a bench. "This place is amazing," she sighed, inhaling the rich, fragrant air. "I'm glad you liked it. I like how night falls in the south. In about 5 minutes, you'll see for yourself. It's almost 8 now." Elsie held her breath and indeed saw the city plunging into darkness. The sky was so black, especially over the sea, that it took your breath away. The areas illuminated by streetlights seemed like vulnerable islets, surrounded by darkness. Insects buzzed, flew, and jumped everywhere. Relaxed, Elsie sat on the bench, embraced by her husband. She watched the lights passing by cars, scrutinized the silhouettes of pedestrians illuminated by bright shop windows. Suddenly, her body tensed. Aaron felt it clearly. "What's wrong, my love?" he asked. "Aaron," she whispered barely audibly. "Look there. Look. It's Alice." Aaron jumped off the bench in the direction Elsie pointed. He indeed saw his ex-wife. She was strolling leisurely, examining mannequins in shop windows. "Oh my God," he exclaimed. "Okay, stay here." "Wait," his wife said. "Let's follow her. If Alice is here, then Drake and Julia are probably here too. We can't scare her away." "You're right," Aaron pondered. "All right. Let's cross to the other side. Let's see where she's heading." The couple crossed the road. Alice was walking about 30 meters ahead of them, occasionally stopping. In those moments, Elsie and Aaron pretended to be engrossed in window displays. Elsie seemed to summon wild energy from somewhere. Aaron could feel it, seeing a wild gleam in her eyes. They had almost walked the entire street when Alice suddenly got into a taxi. "Done," Aaron said. "I hope she didn't notice us." "Elsie, I noted the license plate. I'll call the detective right away. He'll come. Just don't worry." "Okay, everything's fine," his wife confidently replied. "They won't get away from us now." The detective arrived the next day. He immediately checked all the data. It wasn't difficult for him to trace the destination of the car Alice got into. He asked the couple not to take any action yet. Everything needed to be thoroughly checked. The surveillance took 2 days. "Well," the detective reported with a satisfied face, placing a hefty folder on the table in front of Elsie and Aaron. "We got them. Take a look at these photos. The girl is with them. They live in the suburbs. It's about a 40-minute drive from here. Elsie trembled as she sifted through the photos that captured her daughter. Over the year, Julia had grown significantly, but her mother immediately recognized her. The little girl had a short haircut, a cute bob replacing her long locks. They've been living here practically since the abduction. The detective continued. Registered as the Woods family, Roger, Penelope, and their daughter, Amber. The child doesn't attend daycare. Neighbors mentioned that the spouses rarely leave home because the daughter is frequently unwell. Oh, God. Elsie exclaimed in fear. Calm down. It's just a cover. The child is healthy. The abductors don't want to risk exposure. Now, moving on. Both work from home. I couldn't pinpoint their exact occupations. The man is a designer, or something similar, and the woman seems to be a homemaker. The house is under their ownership. Can we call the police right now? Aaron inquired. Yes, I believe we can corner them easily. They're always at home. Aaron called the investigator handling their case, promptly sharing all the details they'd learned from the detective. The officer assured them he would immediately get in touch with his colleagues and wait for them to establish contact. Elsie couldn't wait to see her daughter, but Aaron explained that rushing could cause significant harm. About an hour later, they received a call from the local police department. A female investigator informed them that the task force was ready to head to the address and suggested the couple accompany them. Elsie agreed without hesitation, although Aaron suspected it might be risky, dangerous. Elsie was extremely agitated. Our daughter is there. Do you really think that scoundrel will resist? They don't even suspect anything. They'll be apprehended, and only then will we go in. You don't believe I'd, in my obsession, run ahead of the police, do you? To be honest, Aaron hesitated. That thought did cross my mind. Elsie glared at him with intensity, but something in her husband's demeanor made her burst into laughter. Elsie laughed for a long time, occasionally transitioning into tears. Seeing his wife in distress, Aaron embraced her, attempting to calm her down. Soon, the apprehension team arrived. The spouses got into the car with them, and half an hour later, they were standing about 20 meters away from the house where the abductors had been hiding. Elsie felt like the heroine of some suspenseful movie. Her nerves were on edge, and every minute seemed endless. The only reassuring factor was Aaron's hand tightly gripping hers. The police surrounded the house. The street appeared lifeless, with occasional lights in some homes and sporadic barking of dogs. The apprehension team infiltrated the territory of the Woods house, encircling the building. A young police officer rang the doorbell. Within a minute, Drake appeared at the threshold. In a matter of seconds, he was subdued and handcuffed. A couple of minutes later, 2 police officers emerged from the door, escorting Alice. The woman resisted desperately, trying to break free, but all her attempts proved futile. The abductors were placed in the car. The young police officer approached Elsie and Aaron. Mr. and Mrs. Cole, follow me into the house. The girl is inside. She's asleep, and everything is fine with her. We'll take her, and then we'll head straight to the station. Elsie jumped out of the car and ran towards the house. Aaron didn't even have a chance to grab her hand. As she passed by the police car, Elsie felt someone's gaze on her. Without turning around, she knew it was her ex-husband looking at her. She rushed into the house, where police officers were already waiting for her. One of the officers escorted her upstairs. Julia was peacefully asleep in her bedroom. Elsie practically threw herself onto her and began hugging her. "Mummy," the sleepy girl murmured. "Is it you?" "It's me, sweetheart. Of course, it's me." Elsie tightly embraced her daughter, showering her with kisses. "Mama," the girl shouted, finally waking up. "I've been waiting for you. Uncle and Auntie said you got sick and couldn't come to me anymore. They were joking. My dear, don't cry, Mommy." Julia's tiny hands wiped tears from Elsie's face. "I won't, my joy. These are tears of happiness. I missed you so much." "I missed you too." "And where's Daddy?" Aaron entered the room. He was also crying. He stood at the doorway for a moment, watching his beloved wife embrace their daughter. Then he couldn't resist and rushed to hug both of them. The investigation didn't last long. Drake confessed to everything. He explained how the plan came to his mind. When he first learned he would become a father, he immediately told Alice everything. Back then, he knew that his woman could never have children. However, he didn't suspect that this topic would be so painful for her. Alice gradually persuaded him to claim his rights to the child. Despite all attempts to resolve the matter peacefully, Elsie remained unyielding. And when the court prohibited him from seeing his daughter, something snapped inside him. Alice proposed a plan, but executing it was not so simple. Drake began to meticulously outline the plan, ordering documents in advance. He bribed his ex-wife's secretary to stay informed about Elsie's affairs. However, as time passed, the right opportunity did not present itself. He even bought a house where he planned to start a new life without arousing suspicions. There was no talk of going abroad. It was much easier to operate within their own country. One day, Tiffany called and informed Drake that Elsie would be working late. Supposedly, she had just called her husband, asking him to pick up their daughter from daycare. Seizing this opportunity was absolutely crucial. Drake immediately rushed to the daycare. After waiting a couple of hours, he arrived and introduced himself as Julia's father. It was the truth, so he wasn't particularly nervous. To his surprise, the daycare teacher handed the girl over to him without many questions. Julia turned out to be obedient. He only whispered to her that mommy would be delayed and asked him to take her home. In his thoughts, Drake scolded Elsie for not explaining to Julia that she shouldn't leave with strangers. However, this oversight on the part of the mother played into his hands. He promptly took Julia home, where Alice was waiting. They quickly loaded some things into the car and set off to their planned destination. Alice gave the girl a sedative so that she wouldn't disturb them on the road. When they arrived in Charvel, Julia cried constantly and kept asking for her mother. The biological father had to come up with a story, claiming that he and Alice were Julia's uncle and aunt, and her mother had become very ill, so she couldn't come and had entrusted her daughter to them. Despite her young age, the girl sensed that something was wrong. She constantly tried to escape from the house, so the couple kept her locked up. About 6 months later, Julia calmed down, but the lively and active child turned introverted, silent, and sad. No toys, kind words, or other care from her new parents could replace her mom and dad. Alice frequently lost her temper with Julia, constantly quarreling with Drake. Against his prohibition, she once left the house to take a work in the evening city. It was at this absurd moment that Elsie saw her. Alice was declared mentally unstable. She developed acute psychosis, and her actions were dictated by a clouded consciousness. The nearest years awaited her within the walls of a hospital. Drake fully admitted his guilt and received a real sentence. Elsie even felt sorry for this couple, turned into real monsters by circumstances. Partly, she felt guilty for herself. After all, if back then she had allowed her ex-husband to see their daughter even occasionally, everything might have turned out differently. "Aaron," she asked her husband one day, "do you believe in destiny?" "Of course, I do," he said, rocking Julia on his knees. "Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here so happy and carefree." "Mom, what is destiny?" the little girl asked cheerfully. "It's hard to explain, dear." Elsie stroked her head. "It's how things are supposed to be, like us." Julia inquired. "Yes, darling, just like us." "And what is happiness?" Julia persisted. "Happiness." Elsie was surprised by the question. "Happiness is more complicated," Aaron countered. "No, it's not. Happiness is very simple. It's always close by. Just reach out your hand."